Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This is Karl Mollison and Denny Hunt with GetWisdom, and we're going to continue today with our channeling series. And today, Karl is going to channel Ronald Reagan. So please join us in our pre-channeling discussion, which is already underway. Thank you.
It's funny, too, because my reaction to Reagan a lot of times was that, I always saw him as an actor, and it really kind of brought home this idea that, well, all of these presidents could be acting, and it was like this tie-in where you saw someone as a professional actor, then become a politician, giving these speeches and stuff, and you go like, well, it kind of impressed upon me is like how easily people can be fooled, and how the whole Hollywood genre kind of formulates people's perception of reality and what's happening in the world, even though so much of it's portrayed as fictional, but it really does create a reality for people. And here you are taking those components of that world and putting it in the political world. And he was like, he was front and center, here's an actor who's now your president. And it just kind of got, it kind of makes the wheels spin a little bit about like, well, what's really going on here, And of course now, my view of all of that is that, it's pretty close to 100% theater. Very little of it is out there for, especially the part that the public consumes, for anything but other than theater and serving, a dark agenda, unfortunately. Some of its original motivations were probably good in some ways, but I don't know, I'm hard pressed to find too many positive things that you could lay at the foot of government, especially these days. But anyway, he's going to be an interesting subject for all of these reasons, I think.
Yeah, and let me say one thing quickly, Denny, about politics. Just for the record, GetWisdom is apolitical. Yeah. So people may have their own individual political perspectives who participate in the enterprise as members, as participants, as those in the partnership and the management of what we're doing, as well as volunteers. But we do not advocate any particular political position. We may align ourselves with divine information coming forth in answer to penetrating questions that could serve or align with a political party's agenda at the moment, but may well be opposite to the same body in the next go-round with some other topic. But it's not being done for political purposes. No. I'm not a political person. I've always been a kind of a political cynic because I've been around the block and I've seen how easy it is for them to distort and to lie and to be blind to things. And now I understand for the first time why that is.
Yeah.
Because they are not able to see truth many times.
Yeah.
They're manipulated. So you can't count on anything, really.
No.
And I also know politics are not the answer.
Yeah.
For the world.
Yeah.
We will not save humanity and help the world advance through politics. Yeah, we need it to keep things running and so forth. And eventually, if we can solve the problem of these interlopers, we'll go back to a normal world where it will be our politics that makes things happen. And that will be the only potential evil influence.
And we need to realize that, our notions of normal probably can't be trusted too well because we really haven't had that experience as humans.
Yeah. This is quite true. It's the hardest thing for people to believe and accept, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
you've never known a normal world, folks.
No, and this extends into institutions that are revered, or the whole ideas of what is politics. I've always thought of it like, well, it's a claim to the monopoly of violence, which ultimately that's what it is. Well, is that based on a divine principle? Probably not. So, I mean, that's the extent to which you kind of have to take a step back and look like, well, what is normal for humans? As a divine creation is probably something markedly different from anything that we have experienced, and maybe even anything we've even conceived. So it helps to have that, I think it helps to have that kind of a level of openness or open-mindedness about this whole concept about what is normal for humans.
Yeah.
Well, we probably don't know. The good news is that we have a chance to find out.
Right.
And I think that's what Get Wisdom is hopefully enabling for all of us, is to find out, what does it mean to be a divine human?
Yes. And so we're hoping to add to the picture with some divine wisdom and insight about the whys and wherefores and what the divine perspective might be about the current tenor of the times and the way people operate and institutions operate.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of dysfunction. And so, it's kind of like being a traffic cop, maybe to some extent. But it's not intended to favor anyone in particular, because everyone has things they've done that are not ideal. None of us are divine in our actions.
Yeah.
We're divine in our origins. But at the moment, we're working from behind with unawareness about reality and a lot of disinformation that's crept in to corrupt our thinking, and faulty equipment. So we can't sense the divine and hear the divine normally.
Right.
And that should be the opposite. People should be talking to God all day long in their minds. That's the way we're supposed to be functioning down here.
Right.
And that's been denied to us. So everything then flows from that problem of disconnection. So,
right. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We've got 6 questions for him, and with that, maybe we should go ahead and get started.
All right, so I will take a moment to get in the right state of consciousness to make the connection to Him in the light. And I do this through the Creator of all that is. That's how I do my channeling. And specifically to make it accurate and not interfered with in any way. And this is a problem with channeling across the board. I've said this a number of times, but it always bears repeating, because you can't trust channelers for sure. That may be true of me one day. So it's a question of being earnest and having the right preparation and going through the right steps to invoke the divine in all that you do. Those are the keys to having an accurate channeling experience. And without them, it will not happen. The divine won't connect to you if you're not ready, if you're not in alignment, and if you're not holding a high purpose and a high intention for the exercise. And if you disregard the need to go to them, they can't come to you. So if you think you're going to do something spiritual, it's fine. But it's not spiritual unless you invoke them by name. You get who you dial up. If you dial up the universe, you'll get any Tom, Dick, or Harry coming along who sees you do that outreach and wants to grab you. And this is how it goes downhill. And there's many gifted, talented imposters out there working against the spiritual community. And they've got people herded into a little pen, doing their manifesting and their meditating and their wishful thinking, looking forward to a grand ascension and other things that have been promised, but there's no sign of them yet. And meanwhile, they're not doing any useful work, and they're not growing, and they're getting further in the grip of this manipulation that's going on. So I just want to caution people about that. And the only thing I can promise is I'm doing the best that I can. And, it's your job to assess this, and what you think about it matters as much as what I might think about it. And I hope you have a good experience and benefit in some way. That's really all I can offer. Okay. So I'll let you know when he is here, he'll announce his presence. This is Ronald Reagan.
Thank you for joining us. Were you in need of a spirit rescue upon your death? And since you were diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, can you tell us, does that interfere with one's transition when compared to someone who does not have it?
Both are true. I had great difficulty with my passing. This was for a variety of reasons. But let's take things one by one. The most important thing for people to know is not so much about me, but about this phenomena you raised. This is a good opportunity to sound a warning to every human that they need to prepare for their transition. Everyone knows they will die someday and does their best to put this out of mind as long as they can. But that is like knowing one day you will have a final exam about all you have learned, but never bone up on many subjects or take seriously the implications of being put to a test of some kind. It's no different than a physical challenge you must prepare for and be ready to take on. Perhaps journeying over rough terrain on foot, but never exercising. And this leaves you at a disadvantage, for when you leave the body, you will lose all your normal senses. They are experienced through the physical body. And in its absence, you will be nothing but consciousness. And you will be trapped within your own thoughts. Those thoughts may not be quite normal because you will be thinking in a new way. You are used to using your brain to translate your consciousness into a stream of words in your mind. That is not a normal way to think. It is the thought process of an animal being intelligent enough to be trained to utilize a human language with rules of grammar and a vocabulary that applies to only those words you know about and have learned. This is a very primitive kind of experience compared to what consciousness can do. But it is the best you have. When you lose those faculties, you will be essentially adrift without a compass, without an anchor, without a safe harbor, or even a visible destination. Everything will flow from there. Whether you are able to perceive loving beings coming to escort you back to the light, or may not because your vibration is too low because of disbelief, emotional turmoil, or a resignation and a desire to disappear and have your life come to an end with finality. All of these ideas can work against you, but are not the product of an uncluttered, happy, and aware person. The reality is you are immortal and will live on. The question is what form in which that living is experienced. As an earthbound spirit being, solely a kind of thought floating in darkness with no sensory awareness, you will be at a quite severe disadvantage and are prone to being manipulated by a host of other outside beings who might want to prey on you. Your own awareness of your troubles can become a total focus and preoccupation and make things much, much worse because there will be no relief whatsoever, no distractions to turn your thoughts away for a time. You can become immersed in a profound negative awareness and experiencing. That befell me. And it is not at all uncommon among Alzheimer's patients. And one of the reasons for this is that they are suffering. They are suffering a premature disconnection. It is not that the mind has shut down, as people think, and even regard as a blessing that their state of being rendered powerless to mount thoughts and access memory is a kind of blessing, because they are rescued from themselves in a sense, and at least are in peace, although minimally functional. The reality is the opposite. They are alive and well, but trapped in a non-functioning body. They desperately seek a connection, but cannot do so effectively. The body will no longer work in an accurate way. Words do not come out as intended. They will be scrambled if thoughts can be marshaled and acted on at all. So this is a prelude to what it is like for the discarnate spirit form. All will become on their way back to the light, if they are fortunate. About 1/3 of the time, that will not happen quickly, if at all, for a very long time. Such people need rescuing. This was done for me by your channel reaching out years ago now, because of loving concern for all who were prominent, who may have struggled, who may have encountered extraordinary challenges and an extra dose of attention by the darkness, always seeking to corrupt and always seeking to drag down humanity. This is a fate that need not happen. The answer is to prepare and engage in prayer work to form an alliance with the divine and be not only a friend, but a partner. And expect and take for granted this is a birthright to do so, and will put you on a good footing to feel comfortable about what the future may bring. That is preparation and will help you navigate your passage. It is not difficult, but can take some planning and work by some of you to accomplish, because of the slings and arrows of life getting the best of you, perhaps. So we encourage all to seek help with this as well. You can be rescued, as I was, for the asking, through people who know how to go about this and do so successfully. It is a tremendous blessing, and we encourage all to take advantage of this capability. It is the difference between fighting back and surrender when faced by an opposing army. Which would you rather do? Be passive? Assume a helpless posture and be overrun and decimated, perhaps imprisoned indefinitely? Or would you rather stand strong and deflect the enemy attack with a divine show of force on your behalf, where you need not lift a finger other than your outreach to the Almighty to help you and sustain you and safeguard you at all times, and your loved ones as well.
Okay, thank you. We have learned in past channelings that many world leaders have in fact been killed and replaced by reptilians. Can you tell us about your particular situation regarding your time as an actor and then as your time as a politician and the levels of control imposed upon you to serve the negative ET agenda versus those times when you are able to serve the light?
Mine was an interesting experience, to be sure, and an interesting case study as well in the vagaries of the political experience and the buffeting of forces that ensue for anyone gaining this position to hold the reins of power, seemingly. Being the leader of the free world is not the all-powerful position one might think. Yes, it is possible to wield power, particularly over other human beings, and often in other countries more than one's own. This is often in service to dark agendas and dark difficulties that are desired to happen by the true rulers of planet Earth. These are extraterrestrial beings working in concert with dark spirits who are the greatest scourge humanity has encountered, and is true for these extraterrestrials as well. Their state of depravity owes to the dark spirit corruption, and this is transferred to humans and are on the same path of a downward spiral, losing their divine status bit by bit through surrendering their ability to invoke divine support and protection, and giving up their true source of power. This is a slippery slope that will descend into a morass of helplessness and victimization. It is coming. It is coming bit by bit. You see this in the degradation of morality through society at many levels. The tolerance of inequality and destructive influences, particularly when there is a mix of attributes and something pleasurable, at least in part, they offer. This is an age of non-denial. People want their creature comforts. They also want their guilty pleasures and will not yield them easily. This is not an accident. It is orchestrated to happen, and the political figures are manipulated to bring it about. When a president of the United States aligns with the darkness, all is well, because they, in effect, become a minion, a tool of the dark, and serve them to a greater extent than the people electing them to office. This is a normal way of being. This is how your world runs. This explains why there is ceaseless inaction and political gridlock and ill-conceived dramatic gestures, wildly expensive programs designed to solve a problem or at least provide some relief that end up making things worse, greatly freezing in place what is wrong rather than replacement with a better path. This is happening over and over and over again. When you look to your leadership, you will be encountering one of two things. Either an imposter who has taken over that individual's role in order to have absolute control of things, or a person who is corrupted and will do just the wrong thing at just the wrong time, over and over and over again, to delay action, to give in seemingly to special interests, and then not keep campaign promises, and so forth. This is much more than political shrewdness and cynicism, where people will say one thing and do another because it serves them personally, or allegiance to their true source of power in their mind, their political apparatus, needing care and feeding, loyalty and service, first among many. The true controllers are behind the scenes. They control the political parties. They control the political figureheads. They control the military. They control all the institutions of life. They control the media, the watchdogs, so-called, who serve them much more than they serve the public. This is always true in today's world, and it has been this way for thousands of years. The very complacency that exists is their handiwork. The very confusion about why things are so strange, why people are so divided about things that have a basis in reality that is provable, but denied by observers who clearly see it for what it is, but draw an opposite interpretation as to the meaning. This is not normal. None of it is normal. But people are programmed to see it as normal. This was every bit as true during my time in politics. I was not aware of this. I saw problems as representing human inadequacy, human frailty, human idiosyncrasies, and yes, human greed, indifference, and desire to have power as often corrupting thinking and hardening people. And that this was the reason things were so uneven and people were suppressed even by their own governments. It goes much, much deeper. I was quite naive. And this led to many failings. I had some latitude in what I did and what I said. but not enough to be able to change things to any greater extent, had I even been aware of the truth. Keep in mind that anyone who gets into a position of authority of that kind only does so because they are compliant. And it is not because they are a traitor and they make a pact with the devil, so to speak, to serve a non-human alliance of evildoers to the detriment of their fellow citizens. They are unaware that is what is happening and what they serve when they give in to pressure. They react to their handlers because they know there are powerful forces financially that have a great deal to do with all that happens. And they know that this hidden group can make their lives miserable if they stray too far from their expected role. They are told what to do again and again and again, and learn to do it. If they decline, there will be consequences, and this will be shown to them. They will start to see they truly hold only the illusion of power. It is still a service to do what they can under those dire circumstances, but they are trapped themselves in a world beyond their control. And there's no court of appeal when all is corrupt, when the grip is total. Once they realize all they will gain from an attempt to bring forward their suspicions is a backlash, a severe punishment, they will give in, because to not do so will start a death toll mounting of those around them, and it may extend to their own families as well. They will find they have been compromised along the way by being manipulated into nefarious agreements, and then will be threatened with exposure or an illicit relationship of some kind that would do the same thing should there be a revelation. If there are peculiarities about the person that could cause public embarrassment, this will be exploited, cataloged, and put on record with sound recordings and photographs and videos of idiosyncratic behavior. This is a gathering of information as a weapon to keep people in line. It is a backstop for what is done through a direct manipulation of them via mind control. So what we are saying to you is, it is not the case there are good guys and bad guys, so to speak, among the leadership. There are compromised leaders And then it is only a detail as to what is the nature of the vulnerability and the compromise underway. Total replacement, ironically, may be no worse than someone who is manipulable and can blow in the wind, change directions this way and that in response to events in such a way there may not be a timely response to something, and then it becomes a huge problem, difficult or impossible to rein in. And people will not see the connecting links, that there could have been greater vigilance and something done to preempt the catastrophe getting things underway, and then put that blame where it truly belongs, at least on the human side. They will not know what is going on behind the scenes to influence that human to act or remain essentially disempowered, looking the other way. And so the irony is that an imposter must spend the majority of their time looking and acting fully human, and may go out of their way to do good deeds to keep up the illusion it was the prior individual still present, assuming the office, and may end up doing less damage because there may be perceived the need for their reelection in order to enact future programs readily with support from the top level. Whereas a fully human leader may make human errors and cause their own political destruction, and in effect take themselves out of the fray. It may be in their best interest to not do further damage as a manipulated figure, but it leaves a vacuum and may cause more harm than the imposter who may have replaced them and done a better job as that official, wanting to keep up appearances and buy time for a future catastrophe that might be planned. So we are saying here that this is a distinction of a technical nature, but not a overriding consideration in being able to assign blame or culpability for what takes place or does not. No one in the grip of corruption will be on a divine path. Totally. It is not possible, because corruption means exactly that. They will be thrown out of alignment and will make mistakes. And the mistakes will have consequences. People will die. Treaties will be abridged. Agreements will be broken. Alliances will be strained and may break at times, leaving a vacuum, leading to civil strife, civil war, or growing international tensions that may break out into an armed conflict between nations. This is purposeful maneuvering and a worsening of things that is intentional and the plan of the overseers of the earth. They want humanity to fail, and they relish orchestrating a myriad of challenges. It is kind of a competition and a sport for them to try varied strategies and see who is the winner, who caused the most mayhem in the most interesting way that resulted in the most gruesome consequences. This is a way of thinking that does not occur to normal human beings. It is difficult for you to comprehend the reality we are describing here. This gives them a great advantage. You think when your leaders let you down, when Congress fails to act, when a bad decision is made through words or deeds that creates a rift in international relations, that it is human error, human shortcoming, short-sighted thinking, or perhaps political pressure being brought to bear to rein someone in or misdirect them in a way to favor certain interests and not humanity as a whole. Those things do happen and would be characteristics of a normal human world, given the possibility of temptation for personal gain and the dangers of using ego as the standard of excellence and achievement, and the appeal to personal glory and personal power having a kind of siren song that can corrupt on its own. But those consequences will likely be minor compared to what is desired by this dark alliance of interlopers. It is up to you to be aware of what is going on and seek an answer. And we can tell you that answer can only come through the divine realm at this point. There is no one who will listen and act to change the world at this point. It is too deeply entrenched, too all-pervasive, and too effective in disempowering humans. All segments of society are touched by this manipulation. And those who are not in positions of responsibility are largely rendered complacent and will not see the problems for what they represent. So there will not be a groundswell of interest demanding action and holding leaders accountable. This is the world you were born into. It is not a recent turn of events, but things are worsening. It is not new, but it is continuing, and it is accelerating. The time is growing short to head this off before it becomes so severe it is unstoppable. That depends on you, what you personally do from this moment forward. You are in the line of fire. You are under fire. You will be touched directly by this eventually. What you do will matter. We are raising the alarm for you. We could have done more in our tenure as President of the United States, but we did not know of this dynamic. We were naive, and we were kept that way. We were lulled into complacency. We were manipulated directly by extraterrestrials using mind control. This is a caution for all hearing these words. You cannot count on your fellow humans to do the right thing. It is that simple.
Okay, in a fashion, you've already answered this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, just in case there's anything you want to add. During your 2 terms as president, did you have what might be called a handler? Was this person an incarnated individual or an unseen interloper, or both?
I had handlers of multiple kinds and origins, and manipulated preparation to be effective in that role, to convey key information and actionable instructions I was expected to endorse. This consisted of the entirety of the group around me to one degree or another. Keep in mind, all humans are being programmed. So anyone involved in politics, by virtue of being a human being, will be a programmed individual. Those with access to the corridors of power are given special grooming and preparation to align them with the strategies the extraterrestrial alliance would like to see supported and enacted. A president is manipulated directly with mind control. And when encountering advisors, consultants, and powerful figures coming to bend their ear and present requests or suggestions for policies that may be very important for the vested interests of those individuals, and in many cases of wider value for the community of humans, they will be getting a corrupted message. This is simply the way things are. It is not that every thought is evil. That would be noticeable on its face and raise alarms. Humans have the ability to think. What we are talking about is a certain bias that is introduced. And when the bias leads people to dismiss events that should be alarming, this allows things to fester, to grow in severity, or align in such a way to create a vulnerability that then is exploited through an event that could have been foreseen, but was not, because of the bias introduced to make people complacent. Complacency is engineered by creating, in effect, blinders, where certain types of information on certain topics, in effect, bounces away, does not penetrate the thinking and stay. It is summarily rejected as irrelevant as something already seen to, or not that person's province, or not something deserving of attention at the moment. Whatever the programming is designed to do to deflect any entreaty or inquiry will happen automatically. This is what programming means. It is inserting an instruction set coming from another consciousness. And to the extent this is done, the person is no longer themselves with respect to that subject matter. They will think and act according to their inner instruction set, whatever that is designed to do and carry out. It is very difficult to surmount because people will generally not go against their own instruction set. It is like suddenly desiring to not be oneself. People simply do not choose to do this. This is why it is so effective. So when I was president of the United States, there was a stream of figures coming to me with information, with intelligence information, with recommendations for strategies, with plans to manipulate the legislative process in certain ways deemed favorable by their advocates, and on and on. My job was to sift through these and take action according to my sense of urgency and importance. If I failed to get the message or take the hint, it would not be long before I was assailed with a higher level of intensity until I got the message and heeded the entreaty, whatever it might be. This was done through further programming to manipulate my mind at the deep subconscious level. So at once, those doing the manipulation of me were themselves being manipulated, and were also a feedback mechanism to report on my doings, how I reacted, what I said, what I was planning. And without realizing they were being manipulated to take on this role, would actively give that feedback to their handlers. This is not so different than a normal course of events in any high-level organization dealing with many complex issues, with many subgroups, and a hierarchy of large numbers of individuals covering many areas of responsibility. There are always chains of command, information networks to handle the flow of information going in many directions. It is the nature of human communication and organizational efficiency or lack of efficiency that governs all that happens. When this is corrupt, it is not so different on the surface. What matters is what were the action items and for whose benefit. This is always the acid test. Is it in service to love in some way or another? Or is it in service to a lesser need, desire, reward that may benefit a smaller number of individuals at the expense of others. The divine does not work that way. They will not harm the few in order to reward the many. This is a complex interplay and will not be apparent to outside observers because it is not apparent to the inside observers either. A programmed person will regard you as being mentally unbalanced if you confront them with this theory. They cannot see themselves. There is something amiss. If you look at the current passing scene in politics, you will see with the coming and going of conspiracy theories, so-called, there are many zealous supporters of wild notions that then become embraced by the masses. And then when discredited, and most people will move on, perhaps wondering at it, how that came to be, and how it could have been so strongly supported for so very long, when there was nothing tangible there that can be brought forward now to justify the intensity of emotion and the certitude among political figures as to its validity. Those champions of the notion in the first place will still believe it, even after it is discredited to any reasonable, objective third party looking at the evidence. So what is going on here? They are not pretending. They are not lying, although they are often accused of lying in a very cynical way to keep the lie going and perhaps gain some personal advantage. They truly believe the lie. This is what we talk about here. This is what the programming does. It takes a bias and turns it into prejudice, which is an entrenched belief that is immovable and will not be changed through any persuasion, any kind of evidence. To the contrary, this is the most dangerous of circumstances. And when it is allowed to continue unchecked, can be devastating. We are wanting to sound an alarm here to help people have a lifeline back to a more objective way of looking at things. You cannot trust the propaganda of politics. You must look beyond the appeals to hatred, the appeals to political interests and divisions, the appeals to gender equality, race, age, ethnic origin. Those are tools of the propagandists. They will mislead you every time because the agenda is not to right or wrong and bring people together. The agenda is to sow discord, perpetuate divisions by ramping up hatred and keep people at odds with one another. And that disunity serves the darkness.
Okay, thank you. Did this situation of attempted control upon your person extend into the alleged dalliances as described in Bryce Taylor's books, Thanks for the Memories? And were the accounts she cited there concerning you